Every night for 90 days, a 180-pound Brindle Cane Corso vanished into the abyss. He returned bleeding and broken. They thought he was a monster. They were dead wrong. The truth was terrifying. Fenrir was not born to be a pet. He was a 180-pound biological fortress forged in the shadows of an ancient world, wrapped in a brindle coat that looked like chaotic tiger stripes burned into his fur by a celestial lightning storm. His original owner, Silas, wanted a protector, but was unprepared for the suffocating, primal intensity of a creature that didn't just watch, but monitored the very vibrations of the air. Fenrir stood like a silent stone gargoyle at the door, his amber eyes tracking every heartbeat within a mile, turning the home into a high-security prison. Neighbors whispered about the tiger-striped demon, and friends vanished because Fenrir's unblinking stare felt like a cold death sentence. Finally, Silas broke and abandoned him at a high kill shelter in the Ozark foothills, leaving the giant behind bars that groaned under his immense weight. Then came Elias and Maya, who needed a sentinel for their isolated 40-acre estate. When Maya looked into Fenrir's eyes, she didn't see a beast, she saw an ocean of lonely duty. For the first time, the giant's tail gave one singular, heavy thud against the concrete. They took him home, but Fenrir remained a phantom, patrolling the perimeter with mechanical precision, his ears swiveling toward the dark woods as if hearing the footsteps of fate itself. If you're watching this and haven't subscribed yet, I have to say I'm a little heartbroken. Stories like this need your support. Hit that subscribe button right now. You won't regret it. Now, back to what happened next, because the silence of the Ozarks was about to be shattered. 3 weeks after adoption, Elias woke at 2:47 a.m. to find the porch empty. The guardian had dissolved into the midnight fog. Night after night, the pattern repeated. Fenrir would vanish into the black timber, leaving only the scent of ozone and shadow, only to return at dawn looking like he had crawled out of a meat grinder. The mystery was no longer a curiosity, it was a slow-motion car crash of dread that was tearing their new life apart. The nightly disappearances became a ritual of pure, unadulterated terror that haunted the hallways of the farmhouse. Between the hollow hours of midnight and 3 a.m., Fenrir would simply evaporate into the pitch-black timber like smoke rising from a dying fire. Every single morning at the strike of dawn, Elias and Maya would find him collapsed on the wooden porch, his massive chest heaving like a failing steam engine, his lungs screaming for oxygen in the biting mountain air. His magnificent brindle fur, once a proud tapestry of copper and charcoal, was now matted with frozen mud, gray ash, and the thick, iron-scented stain of fresh blood. Jagged gashes began to map his powerful body, deep, weeping punctures on his neck, and long, razor-sharp tears across his muscular shoulders that looked like they were made by something with claws from a forgotten nightmare. They tried everything to halt his midnight crusades. They installed industrial-grade security cameras, but Fenrir possessed an uncanny, almost supernatural ability to find the blind spots, moving through the darkness like a phantom. They reinforced the fences and bolted the doors, but Fenrir's desperation was primal. He would pace the hallways like a caged tiger, whining with a frequency that vibrated in their bones, clawing at the oak frames until his own nails bled onto the floor. When they tried to follow him into the trees, he would simply freeze, turning into a 180-pound, unmoving statue of granite muscle, his eyes locking onto theirs with a silent, haunting plea that screamed, "Do not follow me, stay behind the walls." Elias saw a dog losing its mind to some hidden aggression, but Maya saw a warrior being systematically dismantled by a war they were too blind to see.
Fenrir was losing weight at a terrifying rate, his massive ribs jutting out like the skeletal bars of a shipwreck beneath his thinning, tiger-striped skin. His paws were cracked, the pads worn down to the raw, pulsing pink flesh, leaving a trail of bloody footprints every morning across the hardwood floors. They lived in a state of perpetual mourning, waiting for the inevitable morning they would find him dead in the dirt, wondering what kind of unspeakable horror in those woods could possibly be worth such a brutal, agonizing sacrifice.
The breaking point arrived at 11:43 p.m. under a moonless sky. It started as a low, guttural vibration, a primal, cacophonous symphony of snarling that signaled a predatory wave. A massive pack of feral strays, 20 strong and driven by a bloodthirsty madness, emerged from the tree line like a sea of shadow and teeth. Elias grabbed his flashlight, but before the beam could even cut the dark, Fenrir didn't just move, he detonated. He launched from the porch like a 180-pound Brindle missile, hitting the center of the pack with a roar that felt like it could shatter glass. It wasn't a fight, it was a massacre of absolute will. Fenrir moved with a terrifying liquid grace, his jaws snapping like hydraulic presses as he threw his massive body into the teeth of the swarm to protect the only people who had ever offered him a home. He targeted the pack leader, flipping the beast with a violent surge of power that sent the survivors fleeing into the abyss. When silence returned, Fenrir stood alone, blood dripping from his throat, his body vibrating with the adrenaline of a god who had just defended his temple. The next morning, a neighbor arrived with a trembling pet. "This dog," he whispered, "has been patrolling the entire valley. He's been our silent wall." The realization hit Elias like a physical blow. Fenrir hadn't been escaping, he had been holding the line, sacrificing his own blood so they could sleep in peace. Maya knelt in the mud, burying her face in his scarred, tiger-striped neck, finally understanding that his coldness wasn't a lack of love, it was the lonely burden of his crown. Fenrir leaned his head against her and exhaled a long breath he'd held for a lifetime. He was the guardian who stayed awake so the world could dream. True loyalty is a silent fire that burns hottest in the darkest nights. Fenrir's story reminds us that the greatest sacrifices are often made by those who ask for nothing in return. Have you ever had a dog that protected you in ways you didn't realize? Share your story in the comments below.